You grew up in Connecticut, right?
Connecticut, Japan.
Connecticut and Japan. I didn't know the Japan one. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a 5-6 year stint from age 10 to about 16 where I lived in Tokyo.
Holy crap. Learned something new today.
Yeah.
I probably knew that and forgot it. So it's kind of fun when you forget stuff as a man. You just relearn it. I do that with my wife all the time. Every experience is like new because I just forget. Sure you can relate.
Yeah. Right.
Man, I'm so stoked to have you here. It's been like,
Thank you.
I don't know how long it's been, 5 years, 6 years, 4, I don't know. It's been a long freaking time. But we've been meaning to get together, and then it's like, we finally got it on the books. I think I had COVID, I think, last time we tried rescheduling. You had something, and I went back and forth, and it turned out to be good timing though. It's good timing because I feel like most of the time, and I'm gonna just start the episode with this. Like most of the time, I talk to you or I watch your content, and I'm like so right there with you, like the fucking crush it attitude and tap into your emotions, all that. Like so, like since we've gotten to know each other, I've obviously followed you and stuff, and I feel so connected. And then over the past month, right off the cliff, emotionally, I was like, out of nowhere, just went to the darkest depression, and I feel great now, thankfully. Thankfully, timing worked out where I got myself out of it. But then I was, over the past like week or two, I've been kind of refreshing myself. I got your awesome book here, a little book plug, upside down. Here we go. But I've been, watching your videos and stuff to kind of refresh and just kind of vibe out how the conversation might go. But I was like, this is good timing because so much of what you talk about is men suffering, and more often than not, it's silent suffering, which is even worse. And on the exterior, we're all like, everything's fine. How you doing? Good. Oh, great. All right. See you later. And then, I feel like we're both similar age. And I feel like when you get to our age bracket, connecting with people becomes less important, or it feels that way when it shouldn't be. And I think you're great at kind of pushing that message of like the brotherhood, the bros. That's important.
So I'm sorry you went through that. Do you know what the driving force was or the impetus was?
Some yes, some no. I don't want to be the finger pointer type guy, but taking the accountability of myself, I think getting really deep on it briefly. I grew up with a bipolar mom and a rather dysfunctional oftentimes childhood. So I think that was sort of the hard wiring. But then taking accountability, it's obviously my job to deal with the situations and play the hand that you're dealt. As you know, because I was on your show, I'm a full-time artist, and that's become increasingly difficult to maintain as a career, both mentally but also financially, which is obviously very important. So I feel like this is not good for marketing to admit this, but I have experienced times where I feel like a total loser, like I should have had a different path with my life. And so I think those things in combination with just kind of burning the candle at both ends just kind of got to me.
Yeah, man. I feel you. And I don't give a fuck if it's good marketing or not. It's just the truth.
It's the truth, yeah.
I don't know anybody in any successful position, myself included, that doesn't have days where I was like, man, why didn't I just become a kindergarten teacher? Why didn't I just go, give me a 9 to 5, let me check out at 5 p.m., let me go to the bar, right? Let me be unconscious. And that pull is less and less, but when it comes, it definitely does come.
Yeah.
I think especially with a challenged childhood, right? That is your set point. That is your default point. And I don't know if we ever get past that completely. We just learn more and more ways to navigate it. And more shit comes up to test that.
Right.
I believe with time, right? Like you're a father, so you know the age that you were when things happen to you because you see it in your kids. I hear this from fathers all the time. They go like, hey, my kid is 5. I was 5 when this one thing that I remember happened. How the fuck could someone do that to a 5-year-old, say that to a 5-year-old, put a 5-year-old through that when all I want to do is pour love and attention and celebration and kudos into this child in front of me? So it's almost a double-edged sword of you get to heal the part of yourself by being the parent you didn't get to be,
Right.
you didn't get to experience rather,
Yeah.
man, is there grief that comes with that. That shit's not free, right? It's like, okay, let me go in the corner now and cry for 2 days because I didn't get to experience this thing. But at least you're talking about it, brother. Like, this is, what's the first rule of Man Club that Connor says? It's straight up. We don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You get a group of guys in the room. I don't care their socioeconomic status. I don't care how successful they are. I don't care about the New York Times bestseller. If you ask, are you having a hard time at all? Every hand would go up.
Yeah.
Period. Like, cool, from your Instagram, it looks like you're just shitting lightning and, gold is falling out of the sky and everything's perfect. Like, yeah, that's not real.
Yeah. I think that what you just said right there, which both of us have to deal with, having a forward-facing business, you have the pressure of, like, I'm supposed to be the guy that's got my shit together. I'm supposed to be the guy that's doing X, Y, Z. And it's like, yeah, the stuff you put online is real, but that's maybe a small little sliver of the whole entire pie of who you are as a human. And people forget that.
100%. And I think there's also responsibility of what do we share and when about the challenges, right? My dad passed a month and a half ago, and I just mentioned it in a newsletter yesterday. I was like, I need 6 weeks where this is mine.
Yeah.
I don't want any influence. I don't want help. I don't want support. I want me to be in the lived experience before the input of my audience comes into it. And I also feel that to be authentic with my audience, who I do share my life with, ups and downs with, I want them to know. Mm-hmm. Because as a man, that's a big initiation. And I'm not going to not share it, but I want to share it from a bit of a distance where it gets to be mine first, as opposed to, here I am holding his hand as he's passing. I've got the phone up so we can all see it. Everybody's here with me. And then it's not real. Then it's performance art. It's just performance. It's not even performance art. Yeah. There's a lot of fine lines that you and I walk. And given our age bracket, it wasn't modeled.
No.
At all.
No.
And think of even when you started your business, what did you have to navigate? Like, I paint, I sell. It wasn't, I need a production company, I need a podcast, I need a movie theater to put like a film crew. I need to navigate the public in this way. People have instant access to me. Like, none of that shit was there when I started business, right? It was like, go knock on a door. Hey, can I appraise your house? Like, that was like, wait for the loan company to call or whatever I was doing at the time. It was not, oh, you get to tell me to go fuck myself, or I'm an asshole, or my work is terrible. And I wake up reading that at 6 a.m. That didn't happen before. Nor the flip.
It feels like there was less fuckery back then. I feel like it was more of a meritocracy in a lot of ways. Like, you really had to earn your keep. There wasn't instant access to every competitor where everyone's just copying everyone and ripping each other off and making each other, different than they actually are. Yeah. You sound like an old man saying that stuff, but it is true,
Yeah. I've been playing a lot with this idea of reach versus access, and especially when I talk to guys about dating or relationship, I say, we used to have reach. I could go to a bar and there was a beautiful woman within arm's reach. I could see her. I could walk up and talk to her, but I had no access. I didn't know her life. I didn't know her personal life. I didn't know where she ate breakfast. Now I can see everything this human does. And, for $7 a month, I can see everything that they do, but I can't reach them. They're out there somewhere in the internet land, and I can't touch them. And I think that's also really disrupted and almost corrupted a lot of people's human experience, because that wasn't the case. Growing up, you and I had National Geographic magazine.
Yeah.
Somewhere out there was this thing. But I wasn't watching the behind the scenes, on my phone every day. And I think that's really hard to navigate. It's challenging to navigate.
I mean, we had some pretty good mail order catalogs with women in underwear. That was pretty good. That was like a bonus. That was like, woo. And then I remember once my family got cable TV. My dad, of course, had like the password on the Playboy channel.
Right.
Around 2 or 3 in the morning, if you like look closely enough, you could see like half a nipple go across his.
Yeah.
And then and then you're like, I could almost imagine what the whole thing looks like.
Right. Yeah, very different times, man.
Yeah, I heard you doing an interview with someone else talking about the whole reach thing. You used the metaphor of becoming like Mr. Olympia. And if you don't live near an access, and if you don't live near a gym, there's just so much you can do. And we have so much access to everything with information and other types of things. And thank God I'm not in the dating world anymore, because I feel like the amount of videos that I scroll by where it's like you hear women talking about, well, if the man is not 6'3" and making $500,000 and all these different things, like I feel like if I was trying to date now, seeing all that, I wouldn't even leave my house.
Right.
And then yet you hear about, understandably, women have all these pressures and blah, blah, blah. Men have just as many, if not way more pressures. And whenever I've said that to people, like hanging out at a friend's house, you invariably get a look from someone like you're anti-woman or you don't understand or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, fucking bullshit. Like I happen to be a shorter man. I definitely don't make like $500,000, like all these different things, all these criteria that I don't meet. And growing up in our era, who are our models that we looked after? We had G.I. Joe and Superman and guys with like fucking chiseled jaws and they were fucking jacked. That wasn't me. Even though I had a poster of like Bruce Lee on my wall and like a ninja and like guys like that. They were my heroes. But like I didn't look anything like that. Yeah, I was looking at your bio earlier. I'm like, dude, this guy was me. Like I would have hung. And on the side of my bed, I had ninja swords and stars that I made myself because my parents wouldn't let me order them from Black Belt magazine.
Right.
Yeah, that was like everything to me. Like, but growing up like that, like if you don't turn out to be that muscular, chiseled jaw like you are, type guy, like I'm not, it does kind of hamper your security and self-worth as a man. And that there is validation in there that's needed that men don't get, that don't have those types of things. And I know it's like women listening or some people listening like, oh, wow, boo-hoo. But everyone has to deal with things in the skin form they were born in. That's just how it is.
100%. You want to do an interesting experiment, Jay? Ask your male audience, when was the last time you got a compliment? You'll have guys be like, 9th grade, it was a Tuesday. Someone said, I love your jeans. And they're like, how old are you now? Oh, I'm 62. Like, but they remember because it was so infrequent. And I don't want to paint us with a victim brush. We're not victims. Yet there's experiences that are very different per each group. And each group has its own challenges. And I have found that when you can just admit we have the same amount of challenges, we just have different challenges. Yes. That's when there can be some kind of unity. That's when there can be some kind of coming together, right? And if we want to speak of the relational world, I agree with you. I just did a whole podcast on, there's like 3 different sets of relationship happening right now. There's purely extractive, like, cool, are you over 6 feet? Yeah. Do you make this much money? Yeah. How about you? How big are your tits? How often will you put out? Okay, cool. Here's the handshake. Let's do that. And then there's in the middle, where it's a big range in the middle. There's a lot of people who are just letting themselves become characters. I am the provider. I am the father. I am the head of the household. That's my archetype. Oh, I am the mother. I am the wife. I am this. And the archetypes get along. And people think they have a great relationship until it stops, until the actual need for depth and connection gets felt by one of the two parties or both. Of like, hey, it feels like we're in a play, but I don't really know who you are. When the director yells cut, we just walk separate ways. And I'm like, hey, how was your weekend really? Like, how was your heart? How are you feeling? How are you enjoying your human experience? And then there is the third, which doesn't give a shit about height, money, abs, breast size. It's all about the depth of connection. And it feels like that is the one that's trying to birth itself in a world of social media, in a world of of filters, in a world of dating apps, in a world of transactional relationships.
Mhm.
And that's why that middle swath is getting divorced or is having troubles with each other, or like one party's like, hey, this isn't working for me anymore. And the other party's like, but wait a minute, our characters get along so well. You know, not saying it in those words, but it's a fucking tough time, man. There's so much change happening so fast every day that we as a species don't know how to keep up. And so many people I'm finding are just retracting or collapsing. They are just giving up. I'm not going to date. I'm through with a relationship. I don't really give a shit. Like AI is going to take my job in 3 months anyway, right? We're not going to make it through this next election cycle. I see so much despair and so much hopelessness because the issue of yesterday that was so important that people put their whole lives into is now poof, gone. Right? It doesn't matter anymore. The relationship they put their whole lives into, poof, gone. Right? And then we know that like in 6 months from now, it's going to be even more different. And 6 months from now, God knows what it's going to be like. Right? We have so much, the speed of technology and the speed of change. I remember hearing Carolyn Mace say 20 years ago had outpaced our biology. 20 years ago, man, I don't even know if I had a cell phone. Maybe. And it like lived in the glove compartment of my car in case, God forbid, I got in an accident and I needed to open it and call 911. And it still felt like an inconvenience and whatnot. Now I have a computer program that if I want, can write all of my emails for the next 5 years in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But then what do I do?
Yeah.
Right? I'm curious for you as an artist, how does that feel? Like as a pure artist.
As the AI thing?
Yeah, or just the fact that it feels like the world is getting faker. And you literally sit down. I've watched tons of your videos with a paintbrush and a canvas, and you create brilliance.
Yeah.
But it takes time. It takes you.
Yeah.
Like I don't think these are 30-second prints that you're making.
Oh, not at all.
Right?
You know what? To answer your question, it's like how dark and deep do you want me to go with that? Because
Dive in, brother.
some of the stuff you said really resonates, that relates to the question you asked. Like as far as you said, ask your male friends when they were last complimented.
Yeah.
I think looking back retrospectively, and everything's in hindsight, right? Looking back, as the child that I was, most of my compliments revolved around me being somewhat adept at art. I was not, as a child, I grew up with a bipolar mom, so I had a lot of issues that I'm still working through, quite honestly, on how to view and interact with the world, how to kind of, how to see myself, that sort of thing, how to navigate myself as well as the world. So you had those things, and I was never physically intimidating or strong. I wasn't good at athletics, so I was picked last for teams. I wasn't good with girls. I didn't know how to talk to adults. I wasn't good at any other area, but art seemed to make sense to me. It helped me figure things out. And the compliments that I got, oh, you're good at art, or can you draw this? Or, oh, that kid Jay over there, he's good at blah, blah, blah. So for me, it's like, okay, to feel better about myself, let me stick with this art thing. So fast forward to answer your question, how do I feel about it? It's become increasingly difficult to be inspired and happy about my choice to pursue what I do because, well, many becauses, but some of the becauses that pop up with AI, I think it's amazing. And I follow every AI article out there. I think it's intriguing. I hope it helps us with medical and science breakthroughs, and I'm super pumped on it. I hope it helps us age backwards. I'm like super fucking optimistic about all that. But as far as being an artist goes, any one of my clients nowadays, or at least in a year from now, can literally click, I want a band poster that looks like this, does that with this on it. Boom, there it is, poof. And it's so intricately done, I could never compete with that. Or if I did, it would just be on a different level, which is also fine and good. But so that kind of waters down the value of what an artist or a musician or a writer can do. It doesn't take away the talent. It doesn't take away the fact that if I see someone paint or play the guitar, I'm still in awe. However, from a commercial or demand perspective, if I need background music for my video, I'm not going to pay someone. I'm just going to go get a free AI song soundtrack. That's what I do. That's what most people do nowadays. And I think it takes away some of the value of that. And it also, for better or worse, you can never see a painting or any kind of visual creation from now on for the rest of human existence and not wonder, did they use AI in some aspect? Whereas before all that, it was like, how'd you come up with that? How'd you come up with that angle, that idea, that color scheme, whatever? Now it's so easy to come up with ideas and compositions and manipulate things. And it's almost like, oh man, you just took away all the magic. It's like you just showed all the strings and all the cards underneath your sleeve, and you showed the mirrors, and there's less excitement now, it feels like, for people looking at art and as an artist as well. And just take that and put it on top of the woes and the panic of the economy and the policies and the regulations and all the other nonsense that artists, musicians, creators, entrepreneurs have to deal with. It's a lot. It's a lot to cope with. And at this point, I forgot the question you even asked, but that's where I went with it, Traver.
I appreciate the answer. I would also imagine, Jay, I'll just project that if that is your identity and the source of a lot of your worth and esteem, because it was when you were younger, that's a bigger personal threat.
Yes.
The fact that someone can recreate art is less of a threat to me,
right,
as a writer and speaker, so far.
So far, yeah.
It will be when someone can take my image or just go, hey, watch these 1,000 videos this guy did, and now let's recreate his voice, recreate his message, etc. But I gotta believe, man, I'm gonna tell you, I don't know if it's gonna be like an organic stamp, like it's a Jay Alders original or like an organic or something like that. I'd be curious if there won't be a desire for like, hey, that's handmade, right? Like that dude, this is 6 hours worth of work that went into this painting.
That would be so fast. 6 hours. I would be like,
all right, 60 hours.
Yeah, that's more like it.
Went into this painting. Like that's what I appreciate about it, as much as I appreciate the weird color angle or the thing that the computer can replicate. I'm hoping there will be a feel that comes through that doesn't come through with computers. And I don't know, right? I had a futurist in the Nation maybe a year ago, and he said two things that blew my mind, like fucked me up, blew my mind. The first was, in 6 months, you'll never be able to trust video evidence again, period. That's gone off the table. And I was like, oh my God, this is the #1 gold standard for my entire life, was like, was there video evidence? Okay, that's true.
Right.
And then number two, he said what he thinks he will see is more and more intentional communities. He's like, people aren't going to want, like, yes, there's going to be a chunk of the bell curve that wants an AI robotic girlfriend. And they're stoked with that because she's just like, yes, sir, you're the biggest, you're the tallest, you're so handsome. And there will be a whole counter movement of that, of people who go, hey, phones don't come out until Sundays when we check in. We're just now going to farm. And it's not utopian, but like there's going to be a resurgence of conversations around the coffee shop or people like actually communing. I don't know if he was just an optimist, right? I don't have all that much faith in humanity, given what we've done with tech so far. We argue with each other about politics and we look at porn. That's like the two main, and we share memes, which that part's brilliant. But the first two are like, this is what we've done with technology.
All those things get you in trouble, though. Like this morning, I shared a meme, which is fucking hilarious. And it was like a political meme. And I'm like, it was nothing like saying this side or that side was terrible. It was like, I'm sure someone's going to fucking hate me for saying this, but it was just funny. It hit me as funny. So I shared it. It was like, the DNC is going on. Michelle Obama was doing this speech, which is fine. Great. Awesome. Doing this speech about, how you shouldn't keep more than you need and like, income inequality and all that. Fine messages, whatever. But it's like the meme was something like, I can't say it exactly, but it was something like, a woman with like 3 mega mansions, 14 yachts or whatever, and blah, blah, a net worth of whatever it was, $200 million giving a speech on blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That's funny. That's just hilarious. And I got like a shitstorm of stuff on my Facebook And I'm like, can't things just be funny? Like it doesn't. And all of a sudden it was like, well, what about Trump? And I'm like, I didn't say anything about politics. I didn't say anything about Trump. I didn't say who you should vote for. It's just fucking funny. And I laugh at both sides are very comical.
Sure.
But that segues into something I wanted to ask you about. I was trying not to make this overly political, but so be it. We're in this weird vortex of politics where we can't even agree on what's a man or what's a woman. We can't agree on what our roles are. We can't agree on, are you supposed to be in touch with your emotions? Are you not supposed to be? Like, how do you navigate this with your coaching clients? Because you're dealing with people from all different backgrounds, all different political views. Awesome. Great. But where do we go with this? How do you navigate this weird world that's telling you, you should act like this, you shouldn't act like this, you should be free to act like you want, but no, you shouldn't. It's like, how are you coping with this in your role?
Jay, I have I'm going to quote myself, which seems a bit arrogant, but this is something that's popped out in an interview with my own team. I said, if I don't believe in your God, don't ask me to pray in your church. And that's kind of the stance I take with all of this. And I say to my private clients, to the guys in the nation, to people I'm talking to, there's a layer of drama that's just not real. There's a reason why it's called a political theater. There's a reason, like I feel a lot better looking at Michelle Obama, RFK, Trump, Kamala, they're as actors, just simply actors. No different than I would watch Mission Impossible and not be like, man, that guy is out there somewhere, like jumping out of airplanes and landing on the tip of buildings. I'd be like, no, it's Tom Cruise and he's playing a role.
Yeah.
And if you can get below the drama, you can start to access truth. And I find that the call of this time is for people to go deeper and deeper and deeper into what is actually true. And what is true for you? What have you been conditioned into? What have you been taught? Like, do you believe your beliefs? I had a guy last week, very, very steadfast in his beliefs about religion. Mm-hmm. I said, would you believe the same thing if you were raised on a different continent? Right? Okay. What if you were raised in Africa? What if you were raised in India? What if you were raised in Thailand? Would you still be this? And I'm not challenging your beliefs. I don't know if they're true or not, but can you see how a lot of your belief is tied to geography? Mm-hmm. Can you see how a lot of your belief is tied to your family system? Do you have the ability to separate the patterning and conditioning that was given to you versus what is authentically true for you? Now that's a wormhole to go down. And so I ask people to do it, carefully, or else you'll lose your damn mind. You'll be like, nothing's true. And that's the answer. Nothing is true. So how do you construct your own reality, and does it serve you? I don't step in politics, man. And people are like, you're irresponsible. Like, I'm not playing that game.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that drama. It's drama. It's like no different than people who are vehemently aligned with a sports team, right? Do I have a New York Giants jersey or a t-shirt? Sure. And I wear it. And if the Giants happen to be on and I got nothing else to do that day, I'm going to watch half the game. Mm-hmm. But if it's nice out, I'm going to go for a hike. If I'm near the ocean, I'm going to go surfing. If it's a beautiful afternoon and I'm with my partner, I'm going to sit with her and chat with her because that's what's real. So to me, the distractions and the civilized world is getting bigger and stronger and louder. Thus, the call is to go deeper and deeper inward, right? My meditation practice has gotten exponentially more important to me over the last 4 years. It was important 4 years ago, but it was more about like mental clarity and, can I focus for 2 hours on work and do I have this ability to just stay present? Now it's, okay, there's a war going on between me and the civilized world, between marketing, between my Instagram feed, between politics, between all the bullshit. And can I hold on to what's true for me? And am I willing and able to challenge, is that true? Or is it just something that someone else told me that fits with my worldview, that fits with my upbringing, that fits with my wounds, that fits with my ego? Am I attached to it that way? Am I willing to be unattached to it if I learn something new that changes it completely? That's what I feel like is the call right now, man.
You know, it's a weird time because growing up, there was always political divide. I remember my grandparents and my parents arguing about stuff, and then we just have dinner and it was no big deal.
Yeah.
And I hear what you're saying. However, I'll push back a little bit because we can't even agree on truths anymore. Like there used to be a foundational level of like, these are facts and true. And then it's like, oh, we have nuance laid on top of it. Now it's like, no, your 2 + 2 is not actually 4. We're like literally in an Orwell novel. It feels at times. So how do you, but I don't, especially being a man and you being a man, a lot of the demonizing and vilifying of men is politically based, like it or not. I wish it wasn't that way. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. So how do you kind of get around there without directly confronting those things?
Maybe it's a bypass and people listening will be like, you're just bypassing it. I simply don't engage, right? It's like showing up to the family dinner and knowing that Uncle A and Uncle B are going to argue about politics and they're completely different than my argument. I'm just not going to go to the dinner.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit there quietly and be like, I actually don't care about either or any of this. But what it requires, though, is having something to care about in its place. So as an artist, I care about my writing. I care about my health. I care about my relationship. I care about my group of guys and what they're doing. I care about my clients. So I think the world has got to get a little bit smaller because the attention call has gotten so much bigger. So social media, I'll stay off of it. And I never engage in. If I see something I don't agree with, like whatever, no, go ahead. You're allowed to have your worldview. And I'm old enough, Jay, to say, like, I still believe in facts. Yeah. And I'm not really interested in a conversation that doesn't. That's okay. You're allowed to be as creative as you want with your own life. But I'm just not a party to it. I've become far more simple.
You know what, man? I was so good at that before having kids. I was so good. I didn't know what was going on in the world. Like if we were hanging out surfing and you're like, yeah, what do you think about so-and-so president or whatever's going on? I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck's going on. I have no fucking clue. And now with kids, especially in public school and especially caring about where they're going with society and their future jobs and like the economy and policies, like I find it increasingly difficult to take that burden of stress off of me.
Yeah,
is that weird? Is that
no? I don't have kids, but I would imagine it's a protection mechanism. You want your kids to be safe. You want your kids to grow up in a world that's fair. You want your kids to deal with, quote, reality. I would be far more concerned, I think, if I had kids. I probably wouldn't. I'm not telling people what to do. I probably wouldn't put them in public school. You know, this is where, like, here's the deal. We're all living on a boat for 10 years. I'm going to educate you. You can let the world educate them, right?
Yeah.
America is a bit of a shit show. I've been very fortunate to travel outside of America a ton in the last 5 years. And there are still places where community is the most important.
Yeah.
Where help at your neighbor actually is a thing. Mm-hmm. Where 3-hour lunch sitting over coffee is important because at the end of the day, the depth of the connection is more important than who we're going to vote for. And we're allowed to have our disagreements. We've become so polarized and so divided and so angry, I think because we live in so much fakery.
Yeah.
Our food is fake. Our politics are fake. Our news is fake, right? Our bodies are becoming fake. We don't know what's real here in America because so much isn't real. I call it, like, if you pierce the civilized veil and peek behind the curtain, there ain't a lot that's not fucking corrupt here. This is a very, very corrupt country. And we know that. We see that. We can literally watch something happen on TV, watch it live, and then an hour later, watch the news spin.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the mostly peaceful protests. Like that in itself.
Hilarious.
Right?
Terrifying, but hilarious. Yeah,
completely. And this isn't a knock against BLM, but I remember when I was like, okay, I'm done with media. was in the start of COVID. There was a BLM riot or gathering in LA, and an article coming out saying how that was helpful for COVID. As it got people out in fresh air. I was like, get the fuck out of here. We're not allowed to gather anywhere. This is just straight up lying. And so we've seen enough of this to know, like, wait a minute, that's not true. That we actually, again, have to come back to center and go, I don't know if it's true or not, but this is what feels true for me. And now I want to orient myself and navigate my life from that point. Because all the rest of this is fake. This is drama. This isn't real. So I get it, man. And I said, I'll agree with you that not having kids makes it a lot easier because I don't have to worry about the world that I'm putting them out into. And at this time, God, that must be crazy. I'm genuinely curious if our parents had the same level of fear and anxiety around something with their kids, right? Like I remember the satanic scare of the 80s when we were growing up, having to go get fingerprinted, like having us, like we had a family safe word that if we ever got kidnapped and we could get to a public phone, we could just call and say the word and where we were. Like no one was getting kidnapped.
Do you remember being terrified of white vans as a kid?
Yeah, right. Like it was, then this was, I mean, I've now seen the documentaries that went over the statistics.
Yeah, it was nothing.
We're not getting kidnapped and there were not satanic cults.
Right.
But I'm curious, like, would our parents have the same, would they say, like, hey, this is par for the course?
I'll tell you what one of my biggest, longest fears as a kid was growing up when we did was the Cold War and nuclear war. That terrified me. I remember being a kid in my bed, every thunderstorm, I'd imagine, like, what would that be like if that was a nuclear bomb going off? And that obviously the Cold War ended and Russia was blah, 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 everything was fine. Until the past 2 years, 3 years, I'd never even thought about that again. And lately I go to bed like thinking like we're literally, closer than we've ever been since the Cuban Missile Crisis to World War III.
Sure.
We got a guy who probably shouldn't be holding the nuclear football. And I've got kids and it's like I'm thinking about it and it's like I find myself in extreme anxiety, like Jesus Christ, like there's so many things to worry about and these fucking idiots on every side of things, not just one side, but every side of things are just, shit. Not to get dark, but it's scary, and it's like, it does remind me of being a kid, having that fear. Yeah. I think so much of it comes down to all this nonsense with politics. It comes down to the one side having control or perceives control over you in some way. If there was somehow that control was taken away and they don't, and we have more autonomy in many areas of our life, financially, personally, other ways, I think there'd be a lot less. But it's like, how are you spending our tax money? How are you controlling my life, telling me what to do, where to go, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I
think a lot of it, Jay, I want to say two things. In the US, we have the perception of freedom and the celebration of freedom without freedom.
Yeah.
Period. Like I can't go to a park when it's closed. I'm going to get a ticket for parking in a certain place. Our president sent 185 billion of our dollars to a country without, like, we didn't get to vote on that. We don't have control or freedom, yet we're the freedom people. So that's the first thing to say. And now, what does that make us feel? I have a genius mentor in Dewey Freeman. The guy's been a therapist for 50 years, and he has a developmental model of when we were from birth up until like age 25. And it goes, is the world okay? Then, am I okay? Then, what can I do? Then, how well can I do it? Then, who am I as a more spiritual existential question? What I think has happened in the last 4 years is a lot of us were in the, what can I do? How well can I do it? Stage of just life. And here's the caveat. When something happens, you get divorced, a parent dies, you get hit by a car, you get reverted back to one of the earlier stages. I don't know if you remember, it's probably been a while since you've been broken up with, but when it happens, like I remember when I was getting divorced, I didn't want to leave the house. And it wasn't just because I was depressed. It was like, I don't know if it's safe out there.
Yeah.
Like, you're a 190-pound ex-cage fighter. What's not safe about the world because your wife says she doesn't want to be with you anymore? I just emotionally went back to that point.
Right.
And I think what the pandemic did And then the rise of tech afterwards is put everybody back in is the world okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not. Because suddenly we do see the war in Gaza. We do see the bombing in Israel. We do see what's happening in Ukraine. We do watch the shooting this weekend in Texas. We do. And then we watch the news spin it and go, well, the shooting wasn't that really bad because it wasn't these particular people. But our insides are like, wait a minute. I live in a city that kind of looks like that. Is it okay here in Denver? Is it okay where you are in Jersey? Am I okay?
Right.
So we don't get to go up to am I okay if the world doesn't feel okay. And right now, the world doesn't feel okay. So it would make sense to me that you, a grown-ass man with all kinds of talents and abilities and resources, may still feel like, hey, the world doesn't feel okay. Or to project that onto your kids because they're not your size. They don't have your bank account. They don't have your Rolodex. They don't have your life experience, right? So is it okay for them? That's your job, is to make the world okay for them. That's a parent's role.
Right.
But if you don't feel like it's okay for you, how can you then make it okay for them, especially when they have inputs and influence, such as the public school system, that you have no control over? You see how this all, like the setup for the problem. So I don't know how you don't have anxiety, brother. Right?
There you have it. Thanks, Traver.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll be here all
hell.
But truly, it would feel like anxiety is a natural reaction to what's going on in the world.
And then it's like it sets another layer on top of that when every person has their own view on how to fix the said fucked up world. And then you have your idea, and I'm like, wait a minute, that idea is fucked up because that conflicts with my idea. Then I'm like, my idea is better. And you're like, no, your idea is going to screw me up. And we're all like, I'm going to fix it this way. I'm going to fix it this way. And you're like, I was trying to think of things that I wanted to bring up to you, and I have this one thing I want to bring up to you, and I don't know if it's going to lead into a question or maybe it'll just stir up something that you've dealt with clients.
Sure.
I have 3 kids. I had 3 kids within 18 months of each other, express plan. And it was I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. He's struggling.
3 kids within 18 months?
Yeah. My daughter was born, and then right before 18 months from then, my twin boys were born.
Oh, okay. I thought you crammed 3. I was like, man, that's the math.
From 3 different moms, hanging out with my low Roger.
Your wife doesn't listen to this episode. Yeah.
I was like talking to a friend of mine, a really close friend yesterday. He's a new dad, and he's really struggling because he put so much of his identity into work, and now he's realizing for the first time with a newborn on his lap, you can't really work as hard, you can't really sleep, and you have to sort of decide what's more of a priority, being an amazing dad, being a committed father, raising a great kid, or crushing it at work. We were chit-chatting, and one of the things I brought up to him, because he has a son, I was saying to him, you know what, blank John Doe friend, I said, when my daughter was born, it was interesting because raising a girl is different for me than raising boys. And for me, the experience I had was when my daughter was born, I intuitively knew as a man, there's certain ways to take care of girls and women, to treat them well, honor them, protect them. Even if you don't have great experience in the dating world of being good to women, you know what you're supposed to do. And so I intuitively was like a great girl dad. I knew exactly what to do. And then my boys were born, and of course I've always been great with them as well. Love them more than, I love them all equally. However, it was different emotionally and mentally. And I remember talking to some of one of the women that did our hypnobirthing class, explaining to her I was like really in a weird mental funk after my boys were born. And after the fact, I realized it's because when you raise a son or sons, for me at least, and I'm wondering if you've seen this before, it's different because you're almost raising a mirror of yourself. You're seeing yourself reflected into them. And it's like, wow, it's different than just protecting you and taking care of you. I have to train you. I have to make you tough and resilient. I have to make you better at the things than I was as a man. A lot of pressure, a lot of fear, a lot of guilt. And I think my friend was experiencing some of this as well because he has a son now. I'm wondering, I don't really have a question, but I'm wondering how you react to hearing all that.
Again, the caveat is I don't have kids, but I work with a lot of fathers, a ton of fathers. And it does feel like, I'll say this for both men and women, that it's your job to teach him how to be a man. It's not your wife's job, because she can't. She doesn't know how to be a man. She can teach him how to be a good person. She can teach him how to be a kind human. She can teach him how to be a loving individual. But there's a job requirement and role of being a man. And that is on you. It's not solely on you, but it's on you. You're the primary educator of that. And the trainer, I like that you use that word. Now, why is that confronting? Because it's going to have you then go back and look in the mirror and say, here are all the ways that I'm, quote, perhaps deficient in being a man. I wasn't taught this. I'm still not good at this. I didn't have that. So who am I to teach this young boy to become a man? And I find a lot of guys, either they become the abusive soccer dad of like, okay, I'm insecure. I wasn't really good at this, so I'm just going to micromanage and abuse the fuck out of this kid to try to get him to be the next, scholarship athlete. Or they check out. They disappear. Or the third option, this is when I get guys that come to me, is what's the work that you still need to do for yourself on being a man? Where are the pockets where are the holes in your defense or in your offense? Like, what part of you is still not really, really comfortable with being a man, with the job of being a man, with the role of being the man, with being the structure and the leader, with being penetrative in your work, with being the overarching theme in the marriage. Like, you're the patriarch. I know that word triggers the fuck out of people, but it literally is what you are.
Sure.
And so that's where I think it's confronting, man. And I'm going to say this, that's where it's also a beautiful opportunity.
Yes.
Because that kid does not need every box checked in a man from dad. Mm-hmm. He needs dad to be loving, to be caring, to be kind, to know how to meet him, to be there emotionally, to show him this is the ways of the world, to pat him on the butt and tell him that he's proud of him. That kid needs to be built up more than he needs the perfect replica model of G.I. Joe meets George Clooney meets whoever else is, like this fantasy character. And I would invite you, Jay, and invite every guy who's listening to this to ask yourself, what did you wish you got from your dad that you didn't?
Mm-hmm.
And then don't hyperfixate on that, right? Like we joke, I'm in a number of men's groups, and one of them, a good buddy of mine, took his kid camping in the backyard. He's like so excited to have his son camping in the backyard. And he was like, I want to do this because all I wanted to do growing up was camp in the backyard with my dad. And so now I get to do it, and it's awesome. And his kid loved it, and it's awesome. And we still joke with him, like, your kid's going to be in therapy in 15 years being like, all my dad wanted to do was camp with me in the backyard. And what I really wanted him to do was, show me X. Yeah. And that's inevitable, right? And so your job is not to aim for perfection, but I would say to all the dads listening, your work is still, the behind the scenes work is, are you engaged with your own process of becoming the most complete, fully expressed, open-hearted, yet structured and powerful man yourself? Because that kid is going to learn by modeling. Period. Fucking period. Mm-hmm. How many guys like Jim, like you lift weights, right? Yeah. I guarantee you, your kids will be weightlifters. You surf, your kids
they already lift with me. Yeah.
Guarantee it, right? They've already seen that. So that's where I think, Jay, they also, and this is a really important point, they want to know that you're human. So many of the men that I work with are like, I can never let my kid see weakness. I can never let him. And I'm like, good, you're going to train him that there's no weakness. You're going to train him that dad has no emotion. At some point, he's going to grow up, especially younger kids now, because they are growing up in an emotionally intelligent world. Dad isn't just the figure that comes home at 7 p.m., reads the paper and drinks the scotch, kisses them off on the forehead and goes to bed, and then they see him, mowing the lawn on Saturday, and that's their relationship to dad. Mm-hmm. So the more you can be human and understanding and caring and attuned, I'll use that word. I think that's the money right there. how can you attune to that boy in a way that lets him know the world is safe, man. I'm safe. When you go out into this big, scary idea and you get your ass handed to you, you get to come home here and it's safe. And by the way, you're okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to skin your knees. You're going to get broken up with bike girls. You're going to lose money. You're going to do dumb shit. You're going to be okay. I think those two bottom rungs of the developmental model, if parents can provide those, then the kid is set up for far more success than in any other capacity. Now, that doesn't mean that kid may not end up, not doing well. How many times do we know great parents and the kid's a heroin addict, or something happened at school, or they crashed a car? Like, life is going to life as well. But I would say taking the pressure off of the perfection. And also, Jay, we pointed out one example for you, but celebrating. How are you as a father? An amazing father. Think of what weightlifting and kettlebell swinging and surfing and skateboarding will do for the rest of that kid's life. God forbid something happened to you today. Those kids are already set up to have a really good life.
Yeah.
And have things that, like, learning paths. Weightlifting's a learning path. Surfing is one of the ultimate learning and spiritual paths. Skateboarding's a learning path.
Sure.
Man, what else could you ask for is to start your kids on a path of growth, development, transformation, engagement, etc. I know it wasn't really a question.
No, it makes great sense. I think it's very relatable to people listening, whether you have kids or not. I think everything you said hits home. I think, Traver, I want to share a quick story with you. My twin boys are 9.5 now. They're in jiu-jitsu, and it's constantly a struggle to get them to class. Like, it's like the one thing that if I was like, you guys can quit, they would quit. When they're there, they do great. They just got their gray belts. They're crushing. They're tapping people out. But it's just like getting them out the door. And we had this talk the other day because they both were like, I don't want to go, blah, blah, blah. And I had to sit down with them and have an emotional talk and explain what it's like growing up as a man, not just being in third grade and feeling safe, but like, guess what? Once puberty hits and boys start acting like a-holes, and once you or a friend that you love gets in a confrontation, I shared with them stories of bullies that I had messing with me, and I shared the stories of when I was trying to overcompensate and bully other people, because it goes both ways. It's reciprocal. And I was explaining the fear that you have when someone's physically attacking you and you don't know how to defend yourself. And I was explaining to my boys, I said, guys, when you were born, it's my job to protect you. And I told myself I would always do that. But part of my job is to make sure you could protect yourselves. And we had a good emotional talk. And I explained to them, I'm only doing this because I love you. And, you go to school, you don't always want to be in math class. You don't always want to be in science class. Learning how to defend yourself is just one of those things. So I wanted you to understand why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this to torture you. And by the end of the talk, it got emotional, and they haven't complained about it ever since. But it's important, I think, as a parent or just a man, even if you don't have kids, to learn how to balance emotion, vulnerability, and strength. And the question I want to ask you is something that you probably deal with every day with your clients and your groups, is where and how to place your emotions. Because on the one hand, you promote having emotional intelligence. Like in your book, I was reading it over again. You talk about how it's important to be able to tap in and appreciate and understand your emotions. But then also as a man, you don't want to be all sappy and complaining to people. You want to take accountability. There's a very, very fine line. Like, no one wants to hear you bitching and moaning, but you also have to be able to talk, and you have to be able to identify and validate your own emotions. So how, as a man in today's world, especially when we're constantly being called toxic masculinity, we're constantly being labeled things, and some of those things, me as a man, I could deal with. It's fine. You want to be stupid and radical and call me whatever because I'm a white straight male, like F you, whatever. But it's like when that applies to my kids, that's where I get fucking angry. That's like, all right, now we have a problem. If you start putting labels on my children because they're X, Y, Z, that's where we have a problem. But how do men that you work with and people listening, how do you deal with the balance of getting your emotions dealt with and addressed without coming off like a sap or someone that feels weak?
That's a great question, man. And it's a nuanced answer, right? I had a guy a month ago, Jay, email me and ask, can you teach me how to kill and destroy all of my emotions? I never want to feel them again. And I was like, no, send, right? And even if I could, I wouldn't do that. I think if we look at, and this is a general, broad, sweeping idea, the masculine or masculine energy provides structure and order in the world. Feminine energy is a little bit looser, and people don't like this term, but it is more chaotic. It is more free-flowing. Art is the feminine. It's not linear. It's a bit more chaotic. Now, we have to balance this with our own humanity, right? So I have to tell guys, I want you to feel every possible emotion you can. I want you to have a full range and depth, and emotion is the color and the flavor of the human experience. Why would I deny that and cut myself off from that? Yet, I can't be ruled by it. To me as a man, I have a mission. I have a purpose. I have a reason why I'm here. I've worked with this and sat with this and dug into it. I have a feeling that my soul, the thing that's deeper than my body, that's deeper than my conditioning, deeper than the place I grew up in, and I'm not a religious person, but I mean there's something in here, some essence of why I'm here. That is my number one priority in the world, following that thread, whether that's to become a father, whether that's to become married, whether that's to be a business owner, whether that's to live somewhere that I don't currently live. I live and die by following that thread. That's what's led me to the life that I have now. Now, certain things come in and out of my life that produce pain, that produce suffering, that produce joy, that produce happiness, that produce satisfaction. I need to feel all of those. Those are nourishments. I don't want to go through my day eating white rice and drinking lukewarm water. You'd be like, because I'm a man. Fuck that. But yet I'm not going to survive on ice cream and candy and cake and all the things that just make me feel good. I told you my father passed 2 months ago or a month and a half ago. There was a period where I didn't work, where I told my team, hey guys, I'm out. I'm offline. I'm a mess right now. I'm supposed to be a mess right now. I'm supposed to let grief do what it does to me. Grief is its own process. I want to be the surfer on the wave of grief, not the guy sitting way out in the lineup being like, nah, doesn't even bother me. I need to get pummeled by those waves. I need to get held under longer than I can handle. I need to come up for air and go, oh my God, look at the appreciation I now have for breathing and for life and for the zest of it. Holy fuck, let me go out and actually do something again. Now there are days, this was fresh, where I go, okay, I just got my ass handed to me again this morning. Something came up. I got a letter from my uncle talking about my dad. I'm clearing my schedule for the next 3 hours. Now, I believe that there's a natural period when this is not allowed, but is natural, right? If 3 years from now, we get on this interview and you're like, hey man, what have you been up to in the last 3 years? I was like, Jay, nothing. My dad died 3 years ago. And I've just been sobbing and grieving and crying and upset. You'd probably say, like, I think that's a bit longer than natural. Like we have some intuitive understanding that maybe that's a little bit long. Now, if my child had died, that I think would still be an acceptable time period, right? If my distant uncle had died, you'd be like, 3 years, man, that's a little bit off. And if you had called me the day after my dad had died and said, hey, how are you? And I was like, I'm fine, man. Part of you would intuitively be like, are you sure that's what's really going on with you? So I tell guys, I want you to feel and experience and express the full range of emotion, but they're not your fucking God. They don't rule you. And there's going to be times. There were times in the last 6 weeks, man, where I was like, I don't want to get on this interview. I'm editing a book right now. I don't want to edit. But I have a mission. I have a purpose. I have a reason for being here. I have a bigger picture that I understand and believe in. I'm going to have to put this to the side for the moment, but I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to go for a walk out in the woods and cry for half an hour and just get that shit out, right? I'm going to go to the pool and dive underwater and scream and flail around in the water because I know that helps me, and get it out. And then I'm going to get back to why I'm here. I'm going to get back to my relationships. I'm going to get back to my people. I'm going to get back to my work. The challenge I see with so many men over the age of 35, for say, if we'll draw like a pretty innocuous line, is emotion is a problem that needs to be solved, either in our women, in our children, or in ourselves, as opposed to emotion is just something that's supposed to be experienced, but not be ruled by. Now, under 35, what I see as a challenge for a lot of men specifically is they don't have the structure, the order, the discipline, or the drive, and they're just living off of emotion. They're far more in a feminine space. We're far more in like a hyper-masculine space. So in the middle is where I want guys to live, and I try to live myself, right? And I don't think emotion is bad at all. I think it's completely normal. I've said to how many guys, like, do you think it's weird that you pee? And they're like, no, man, that's a really weird question, though. I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's weird that water falls out of my eyes when I'm sad. I think it's completely normal human response. And a lot of the view around it, the shame, the guilt, the whatever, the finger pointing that it's bad, is just conditioning. Again, it goes to the question of if you grew up in...
Just because I don't want to forget asking this. Sure. So you're dealing with men with the same struggles we all have. A guy is in your group and says, Traver, I've got all these emotions. I need some strategy, some advice. What people listening, every guy, every person can relate to these kind of things. Where do you tell them to go? Because I don't think if a guy is in a relationship that it's overly, maybe I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's overly healthy for you to unleash on your woman if you're a straight man, and or at least not routinely, right? Maybe once in a while, of course, absolutely, but you shouldn't use in my case, I shouldn't use my wife as a therapist. And women tend to, as a stereotype, tend to just blah, 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 because the talking process, and I don't say that disrespectfully, women talk to work things out, whereas men usually don't say anything as a stereotype unless they want specific advice. This is where men, I find, often get in trouble, myself in the past included. You'll say something wanting advice, and if you say it to a woman, they're just going to let you talk, and you're like, can you just give me some help here? And my wife or past girlfriends might say stuff to me, and I'll start giving advice, and they're like, can't you just listen to me? And it's like, that's one of the key differences. So if a man is at the point where he's vocalizing to you or in a group and needs help, because that's the point he's at, what does he do with that at that point? He needs help. He needs strategy. Yeah, this is $1 million question. First to answer, I'm going to go backwards. One of the most incredible sentences I was ever taught, or questions I was ever taught to use in relationship, which I use constantly, is this a listening conversation or is this a solutions conversation? And boom, I've used that, Jay, 40 times in the last 2 months with my own partner. And the only asterisk I now know is if she's hungry, it ain't a listening conversation. It's a fucking get me some cheese conversation. It's a solutions conversation. I think that was like from Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, because I definitely use that also. I'm like, are you asking me for advice or should I just listen? 100%. Now, I actually believe that men need to be listened to as well. We need to be heard. We need to be witnessed. This is not a male-female thing. This is a human thing. So if we go back to my original conversation about the 3 levels of relationship, in the first level of relationship, there's going to be no vulnerability. You open up and have emotion in front of your woman, you're going to get left immediately. Period. Dropped. It's not attractive. I'm not here for that. There's no depth. We go to the middle layer. It depends. Do the characters that you're playing have an agreement that emotion is okay? Or do you have an agreement, silent or otherwise, that emotion is weakness? That's the problem. That's the challenge zone. Because in the one on the conscious depth relationship, emotion is welcome.
Emotion is a requirement. That's actually how we produce and create intimacy, which is the ultimate goal of the third stage. In the third stage, we want nothing more than to be known more deeply by our partner than by anybody else in the world. So therefore, we do have to bare our souls. We do have to cry. We do have to be emotive. But let's talk about in the middle. Here's the advice I have to guys in the middle. That shit needs to be heard, felt, and witnessed. If you know that it's not going to be able to be held by your woman, that's why you need a men's group. Or that's why you need conscious men around you, right? Early training of mine was like, you take it first to your men's group, then you bring it home to your woman. You get it cleaned up and you like, fuck that shit. And you scream and you cry and you beat the pillow. And the guys are like, yeah, man, get it out, get it out, get it out. We got you, we support you, we're good. Now you go home to your woman and say, oh, God, a brutal day today. But you've worked through the chunk of the emotion. Now that's only if the agreement is there that emotion is going to be viewed as weakness. So this is where it gets challenging, Jay, because a lot of guys will read an article that's like, we need more vulnerable men. And they'll come home and be like, honey, I had a terrible day at work, and a tear will trickle down their eye. And she's in the back of her mind looking up divorce attorneys.
Right.
Going, wow, I didn't realize I married a wuss.
Right.
Someone who's weak. And then that guy literally gets divorced or gets broken up with. And he goes, fuck that article. And the next time someone says, hey, you need to be vulnerable, he's like, no. I've already played that game and it cost me my house, my custody with my kids, and my dog. I'm never doing that again. Now, the problem with him is he gets in another relationship and his woman's like, I can't feel you. I don't even know who you are. You're just like a robot. You're like a doer, but there's no emotion here. And he's like, good. Because if I do show it to you, I have evidence that it will end the relationship. So I don't like telling guys, I'm not telling dudes, go home and share your emotion with your woman, because it's kind of like telling them, hand them a relationally loaded gun and just see, maybe she'll point it at you and shoot, and maybe she won't. But if she does, you're going to lose half your shit and you're going to be really mad at me. So some of this, Jay, needs to come from a conversation, like a real honest conversation with the partner, right? Some of it. Now I'll also speak to men. I remember asking a group of women, this was a monumental moment in my career as a men's speaker and coach. Circle of women. How many of you want your man to be more emotional and vulnerable? How many hands went up? Every fucking hand went up. Cool. All right. Let me ask you a question. How many of you would like him to burst out sobbing once a year? Every hand goes up. Okay. Every 6 months, every hand goes up. Every 3 months, some of the hands don't go up. Every week, most of the hands don't go up. More often, do you want him breaking down, sobbing, crying, being emotional more than you are? Not a single hand goes up. I was like, well, wait a minute. Didn't you just tell me I want more emotional, vulnerable men? And it's like, well, yeah, but... And I was like, cool, here's the deal. We are logical creatures. I remember saying this. We are logical creatures. So tell us right now, what's the dividing line? Is it 2.6 times a month that we're allowed to cry? Or is it 3.4? Because this is how our brains are going to work. And they couldn't tell me. It was just, there was some invisible line that if you crossed it, you're now disrespected, you're weak, you're a pussy, you're a wuss, you're not a real man, all of these things. But on the other side of that line, you're a beautiful, emotional, sensitive, feelable dude. And like, man, talk about handing a loaded situation to a guy who goes, I don't know, like I read this article, but then I also heard this podcast, but my ex-girlfriend left me for this. What am I supposed to do? To me, it begs a deeper conversation in the relationship. Hey, how would you feel if this came up for me? Can you feel me emotionally? Is there anything that happens if I do cry in front of you that you'd like to talk about? Because guess what, Jay? That's not the dude's problem. If you go and cry in front of your woman and she gets on the phone and is like, hey, I think my guy's a pussy, that's her work. She has work to do. The challenge is, if the next call is to the divorce attorney or she's packing her shit, you have to deal with the ramifications. So we've handed men a bit of a we've said, women want emotionality and vulnerability, but I would say some women do.
Mm.
Conscious women do. Evolved women do. Now, this is going to piss off all of your female audience. Most women, in my experience, who consider themselves conscious and evolved are not. Going to yoga class, reading Eat, Pray, Love, and drinking latte or matcha doesn't make you conscious and evolved. Like, how much therapy have you gone to? Have you dealt with your own issues with your dad? Have you dealt with your own issues with your mom? Have you dealt with your own issues of being a woman in a society that overly sexualizes you from the age of whatever, et cetera, et cetera? Have you done all of that? Are you in a women's circle? Is that women's circle conscious? When was the last time you bitched about your husband publicly? Like, these are questions that a lot of women don't want to answer, just like a lot of guys don't want to be like, hey, when was the last time you cried? When was the last time you went to therapy? What kind of sexual shame do you still carry? What kind of shame around money do you carry? Et cetera, right? So this is also, I can tie this back into the tech conversation. We say we want this evolved relationship with something, but we don't have the evolved relationship with anything right now. Right? Like we hope that when AI comes fully, we'll just use it for good. Yet there's like child porn being traded on the internet right now. Mm-hmm. So until we can clean up where we are consciously, I don't think we're ready for the next level. And that's what I see relationally.
And yeah, it makes total sense. It's completely relatable. I think the other layer of it is that men and women are drastically different despite what the media tells us. And one of the ways stereotypically, from my experience and everyone I know, stereotypically women will use other women to bounce things off of in order to process, which is fine. That's their method. But then it's like, as a man, you want to feel like once in a while you could sort of be vulnerable and say stuff to your woman if you're a straight man, right? And you're talking to your lady, and then you find out that she just told 12 of her friends your personal business because that's how she processes stuff. And then you're like, well, that was supposed to be between you and I. So like, I personally, and a lot of people I know that are men, have dealt with that by, okay, I'm just not going to tell anyone anything that I don't want out, because that's the only way to kind of keep protected, stay protected within your own realm. If you unleash your emotions, your vulnerability to your partner, your girlfriend, your wife, whatever, it could just trickle out to every single person you know with no bad intentions on their part. That's just how they process things. So it's a scary thing for men to open up in such ways.
Jay, I think you have two ways to go with that. Well, I want to say one more thing before, sorry. The vulnerability and emotionality thing is also very much tied to her cycle. We as men are complete idiots when it comes to women's cycles. And a lot of women are complete idiots when it comes to their own cycles. But what is available, what is looked at as a turn on or a turn off, the exact same stimulus, is radically different depending on where a woman is in her cycle. Yeah. So I would say, is a woman conscious and evolved? A couple questions I have is, how well do you know your cycle? How intimate are you with your womb? How intimate are you with your menstrual cycle? So we can put that to the side. I have cried in front of my woman a dozen times. Some hard shit has happened in the last 4 years. I have zero concern whether she tells anybody or not. Mm-hmm. Stuff has come up in our relationship that I'm embarrassed about. Stuff I did, stuff I'm not proud of, things I said, ways I acted. I just know that it's not contained to the relationship, and I live with that. It's kind of like if everybody's internet password was available, like we'd all kind of be on the same footing. Mm-hmm. And so am I concerned that my woman is sharing stuff with other women? I'm actually not, because there's nothing I can do about it. Mm-hmm. It's like and this is inappropriate, we can say it because I believe I know your audience. It's like being concerned about your cock size. Guess what? Every single woman you've slept with has told somebody about your cock size. So now you can either not sleep with women or just know that, guess what, it's out there, and most people have other shit to think about and worry about and focus on, and so go live your life. And as a as someone who comments on my own life publicly. I've written books.
You know what I hear when you say that? That Traver just has a giant cock. That's all I hear.
I mean, it's a whole other episode. I think we can invite him in and put a mic in front of him. But I've written a book, Jay, about my divorce. And I remember before publishing it thinking, people who hate me will celebrate this book because good, she left you. Good, you got dropped on your face. Good, you were on rock bottom. Good, all these things happened. And I just had to make peace with the fact that, like, okay, so be it. You know, and am I still going to live my life to the fullest potential? Sure, 100%. Whether people hear my faults, know my faults, it's almost, there's a freedom. It's the last scene of 8 Mile. Remember that? Where Eminem is like, right? I'm poor. These guys fucked my girl. My mom was trailer trash. Now what are you going to say about me? When you can get to that point of being like, yeah, guess what? I know you got a closet. I got a closet. We all, the people like hearing this stuff, maybe it's because I'm in a position where I get to hear a lot of real truth about people. And I go, okay, everybody's got their shit. Everybody's got their shit. So do I care that, 6 women sitting at lunch with another woman hear about my shit? Nah. I'm also going to double down on my mission and purpose and go, cool, let them talk. While they're at lunch talking about my cock size or the thing that I yelled in a fight that I'm ashamed of or my insecurity, I'm going to be over here building my idea because I can't control that. And so there's some things we as men just have to let go of and go, cool. Yeah, I cried at dinner. Yeah, go tell everybody. I really don't care at this point. And maybe that's a getting older thing. Maybe that's a narrowing of focus thing. But I care about a lot less now than I did 20 years ago, especially about what people think about me. Because being public, you know this, right? People that you've never met and don't know you project on your shit and hate you and hate your work because of one thing. Okay, so be it. I'm really concerned about my inner circle, right? And I think one of the beauties of being in conscious men's groups is my inner circle knows my shame. They know when I fuck up. They know when I'm embarrassed. They know the worst, quote, things about me because I bring them to them. Say, guys, guess what? I got in a fight with my woman last night and I threw a bottle across the room. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed about this. It goes against my teaching. It goes against what I preach. Man, but I got to tell somebody. And those guys will go, I love you. And don't do that shit again. And we still love you. Now, let's actually talk about what was going on with you in that moment, etc. So I think that's one of the answers is nobody's got any secrets anymore, man.
Yeah.
Right? And so just roll with it. Like, it's okay. So be it. It's only going to get worse. Like, all of our internet passwords are going to get leaked in like 6 weeks with AI anyway. And be like, oh, what? You're into that same shit I'm into?
Bro, what?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like the older I've gotten, and it's probably correlated with like technology and social media. I think a lot of it's just age and growing up, but I feel like there was a point in my life where I'm more bought into everyone's this, not the same, but everyone sort of plays a more equal role in relationships. Like I went through periods of my life where it's like, all right, let's split the cost of dinner, or let's whatever, your career, my career, blah blah blah, and like just the more, I guess it would be labeled as the more progressive view of how relationships should be. And as I've gotten older, as my wife and I have had kids, not that we've completely flip-flopped on stuff, but you start to realize, like, you know what, certain things are just in my nature. Like for instance, like a couple weeks ago, I had a couple art gigs I had to go into the city, New York City for. I was gone for a few days. I get back. Of course, everyone was happy to see me. I was happy to see my family. And Chelsea, my wife, was like, you know what? Like, we always say this. And she was like, but it was something nice about just having the house to myself. And I was able to like cook and clean and like do all these things. And I'm like, you know what? It was kind of cool for me. I was on my own. I was like working. I was staying in a hotel, doing art stuff and business and blah. And there's just certain things that no matter how hard we push against that hardwired identity of who we are, that you were talking about the different roles and the transaction of it all, no matter how hard you push against it, there's something in there that's just real. And it's like, I use this analogy when it's just bro talk, when I'm just hanging out with my friends and you're at the beach or you're somewhere and you're with your buddies from college and you like see some chick walk by, you make some comments and you trash talk, whatever it is. And, I have inevitably used the analogy of like, I think men are sort of like vampires in a way. I think in one of those vampire movies where it's like the vampires have evolved in modern times and they can just break into a blood bank and just drink the blood and that satisfies their needs and they're good. But there's always that nature that's just there, you know what I mean? And we kind of fight and push against it, but it's like on some level, whether you'd like to admit it or not, women just have certain desires and needs and hardwired things. And there's some aspects of men that are just not evolved. That's just, it is who we are. And we could be the vampires that just break into a blood bank or not, or you can do the opposite and just go hog wild like we did in our 20s, right? But that is interesting, the idea of certain roles that we transact with, like you were saying before.
Think of your primal nature, Jay. I'm very fortunate, or not, I don't know if it's very fortunate. Somehow, a like historical photo Facebook group posts on my feed, and I will look at a photo from the 1940s, and it's someone like barefoot, living in a burlap sack, in a shack somewhere in the South that's like a sharecropper or a farmer or something. And I'm going, that's not even 100 years ago. That's not even 100 years ago. I now have a computer on my body that will write me the next 10 books I want to write in 7 seconds. And less than 100 years ago, people were dying because they didn't have enough food. People are still dying because they don't have enough food. So our nature, your nature, this is what I said earlier of like, I follow the guidance of my soul. I could say I follow the guidance of my nature as well. Now I have to temper that in some capacity to live in society because my nature may not be clean. It may not be evolved. It may not be progressive. Yet I think what we've done, like you said, is we've overly civilized ourselves. We've gotten away from the things that actually do make us feel alive for a lot of people. Thus why surfing is so seductive to you. It's you, a board, and nature. You're also part of the food chain as opposed to the top of the food chain. That's why I like jujitsu. It's my body, a gi, a mat, and someone trying to simulate murder against me. That's fucking real. It's why I like writing. It's probably why you like art, right? Even though you were celebrated as a kid, like you have the soul of an artist. You don't get to be where you are you're not like, I'm just going to try this art thing and wing it. Like that's your soul. Mm-hmm. So I know working with a lot of men, what's super helpful for them is to ask like, what is your nature? And for women too, can you return to your nature? We see this and we want to speak to women. How many women longed for, literally, to be a mother and now aren't because society said you're not successful unless you're, CEO at 36. And then at 38, they're like, wait a minute. This was not the gig. This is not the deepest part and core of who I am. I think that's why we see actually a resurgence of traditionalism. It's a bit misguided. Like everybody thinks the 1950s was just a jam, and I don't think it was. Yet the nature of what people's nature had a different expression back then, a different permission. Now we've whitewashed nature away. If I see a beautiful woman and I think, man, I would really like to have sex with her, I'm toxically masculine. If a woman goes, man, you know what I really want? I just want to be a stay-at-home mother. Well, she's now a threat to feminism and the whole movement of all these sisters who fought and died before her. We've shamed each other out of our nature in the name of progress. And so I think there has to be a balance. I'm not getting rid of my cell phone. I'm not getting rid of the internet. But what do? I spend time in the woods. I roll around on a mat with guys trying to kill me. I spend as much time in surf as I possibly can. When I sit with my friends and have lunch, we put our phones under the table. We're present with each other. When I'm with my woman, I get to say, hey, These are all the aspects of who I am. I'm not going to abandon any of them in the name of relationship. If I have to, this isn't the right relationship. Mm-hmm. That's how we get back to sanity. That's how we get back to health. Because all the times we cut off and abandon and remove ourselves from our nature and our soul, there is a cost. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this antidepressant rate in the US, take a look at the anti-anxiety rate. And I have no issue with Western medicine in that regard if it's needed. But how many people on drugs need community, need organic food, need exercise, need laughter, need love, need sex, need friendship, right? Need fresh air, need to put the fucking screen down and go outside and smell something. How many people on those drugs can't run a mile in under 40 minutes who are otherwise capable? How many of those people are locked into a job that they need to pay the mortgage, to pay the this, to pay the that job has nothing to do with who they are? Their soul has left the building years ago, and their body's just showing up fucking creating widgets or selling widgets. So yeah, man, I think it's a very, very important piece that you're speaking of, this primality. We're not that far from it, man.
No.
I did Boulder Outdoor Survival School's month-long course, which is essentially a month in the woods with almost no equipment. On the very first night, they took us all out. We're lying on our backs. It's midnight. They're like, here's the deal. We're going to leave you here for an hour. We want you to look up at the stars. We want you to look around and realize we are returning you to where you were supposed to be.
Love that.
We're not teaching you anything new. We're just putting you back where you're supposed to be. I'll tell you, at the end of that month, although I was fucking starving and wanted a burger, I felt more at home in my body and with time and with space than I ever have before. They left us alone for 5 days individually. Like, you're alone, completely alone for 5 days at the end of the course. It went like that. There was no TV, there were no books, there was no internet, and all I did was watch squirrels play and follow the sun and make fire and cook food. That was it, Jay. That's all I did for 5 days, and I was completely content. And here's the caveat. 72 hours after coming out, I turned to the woman I was seeing at the time, held up my phone, and said, I'm probably 24 hours away from being addicted to this again. And lo and behold, a day later, I remember being at a stoplight. I can still picture this. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Get to a stoplight. What do? Look at my phone. Why? Because I'm at a stoplight. Why wouldn't I look at my phone? I don't need... 4 days before, I was living in the woods, like Tarzan. And it was that fast. Right?
So easily forgotten, though. Like, I experience that all the time, where I'll have like the summer, especially, an amazing summer day. I'll go surfing, I'll hang out, go for a bike ride with the kids. I'll play catch with them. I'll take them to their activities. It's like just a perfect day. And you go to sleep, you're like, yes, I worked out, I lifted, I sweated, it was great. And you barely looked at your phone. But then in the winter, it's like scroll. Oh, that's cool. I'm mad at this. I like that. I'm double clicking this. I want to know how you'd react to people listening, to men listening to you, and they're thinking in their heads like, Traver, it's great for you, bro. I'm so stoked that you have 5 days to go spend in the woods watching squirrels, but I'm commuting 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day to a city, and I'm working, 70 hours a week and blah, blah, blah. We all have friends, whether it's neighbors or college friends or whatever, that are so fucking stressed out, that don't have a real meaningful purpose other than paying their bills or getting ahead at work. And I increasingly have a lot of my friends that just feel really lost. I have a lot of friends that I talk to, a couple close friends I talk to, and the theme that constantly comes up is just not feeling fulfilled, feeling lost, realizing you're in your late 30s, your mid 40s, your early 50s, and you're like, what did I do with my life? What am I, I did the wrong thing. I have a lot of people that will see my social media and they'll think like, oh, I should have done this. And I'm thinking like, geez, you have no idea how hard this is. I should have done what you do. And it's like that comparison. But to people that just don't have the time or the means or the willingness to join a men's group or to take time off to go, what is a beginning portal to what you're talking about? Is there a routine? Is there a practice? Is there something that can get them closer to what you're saying?
Start asking better questions.
Okay.
I think that's a biggie, right? Start really asking yourself about the choices you have. Because I've done this, I've been a total dick to people, Jay, as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to do that? Do you have to do that? Do you have to live there? Do you have to go to that job? Do the kids have to go to that school? Do you have to live in that state? Do you have to buy that car? Do you have to watch that TV show? Right? And it's not just to be a dick, but it's to start to actually put the idea of choice and sovereignty back into people's laps. Mm-hmm. It's not a luxury to start to ask the question, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Now, I also want to speak to something specific because you said there's a lot of people late 30s, early 40s who wake up and go, man, I've been selling widgets or I've been moving X's and O's around an Excel spreadsheet for 20 years of my life. I find, Jay, especially with men, it's around that time, late 30s, early 40s, when we actually start to drop energetically out of our heads, which are just pure conditioning. Hey, everybody in the Boehm family gets a college degree. I remember my mom saying, if you don't have a master's degree, you'll never amount to anything. What do you know? I have a master's degree.
Right.
Do I use what I learned in it? Not very often, right? For his Chinese medicine. But somewhere in my late 30s, early 40s, I dropped down into my heart and was like, do I really want to be doing what the fuck I'm doing? Mm-hmm. Now, I find this across the board. And then there's another drop even lower into your gut, and that's where your soul lives. So like, is this why I'm here? So start to ask better questions. And for people who say, I don't have time, cool. Unplug your TV. When you come home from work, put your phone in the freezer and leave it there overnight and see how much time you suddenly have. Yeah. Now, I'm also not advocating that you pull the kids out of private school, you sell the car, you sell the house, and you go live in Topeka, Kansas, where it's $800 to rent a thing, and you just start writing poetry. But you got to start asking yourself, who's in fucking charge here? Who's making these decisions? Because this is what I find, man. It happened to me. This is the course. I'm stuck. I can't get out of this. I have no choice. I have no option. I have to do this. Okay, car accident, cancer diagnosis, sick kid, dead parent. Something comes and interrupts that conversation. And then what do you know? 6 months later, they're doing something completely different. Mm. And the can'ts weren't can'ts. The can'ts were, I'm shit scared to let go of what's familiar to me and how I'm benefiting from this situation. So if you're stuck in a miserable situation, I still ask, it's the worst question to ask clients, but I do it every day. What are you getting out of this? Mm-hmm. What are you still getting out of this? Okay, you don't have to take the risk that Jay does. Every day you risk when you put your art out there. No offense to the guy doing someone's taxes. It's not that big a personal risk. And what is he? He really wants to be a musician. Well, man, welcome to risk.
Right.
Welcome to people shitting on your art. Welcome to you waking up with anxiety because you don't know how you're going to pay your rent. There's choices that we make. And I'm going to live my life on this side of that fence. I'm looking up right here. There's I have a framed picture above this, and I'm in an Airbnb, or I'm in a temporary rental, but I still brought it with me, of the dog and the wolf. You know that story? Right? Where basically a dog and a wolf meet in the woods, and the dog's like, hey, wolf, you're super skinny. Why don't you come back with me? There's all this food and you get scraps and it's great. And the wolf's like, this sounds amazing. And they start walking off, and the wolf's like, hey, what's that mark on the back of your neck? And the dog's like, oh, that's where I get chained up. That's the mark the chain makes. And the wolf goes, no, thank you, and turns around and walks the other way. I just got chills. Oof. So, first of all, brothers, you ain't a fucking victim. So if you don't have time, make time. You have time. If you don't think you have choice, start asking better questions. What do I really want to do with myself? Why am I here? Is this still serving me? And then you make a plan, Jay. Right? Again, I don't advocate people listen to this podcast and quit their jobs on Monday. Like that's they say like one of the side effects of ayahuasca. Have you ever done ayahuasca?
I haven't yet. No, I would like to someday.
big spiritual experience. They say the side effect is like quitting your job. And they tell you, like, anyone who's good at leading a ceremony is like, do not quit your job on Monday, because suddenly you had some spiritual insight. Make a plan. Start asking better questions. People are doing what you want to do. People have done the thing that you said is impossible. How many people? I know a handful of people who literally pulled themselves out of New York City, private school, high-end dentistry, and now live in like Ecuador. And the kids are homeschooled, and the life is much simpler. Now, was that a free move? No. Is there risk involved in that? Yes. Did 50 of their closest friends tell them they were irresponsible and crazy, as those same people clung to the lives that they don't even want to be living themselves? Absolutely. So, brothers, you start slowly.
You know what's always worked for me, and this is the advice I tend to give to friends as well as myself when I get down, is just a little bit at a time. Like, a lot of my friends that I know that are struggling, they want to have purpose, they want to have a dream, they want to know what they're doing, but they have no idea what they want. They have no idea where to start. And I'm like, you know what, just start steering the ship in a direction that feels better. Start doing the things that help you get healthy, get sleep, work out, all those obvious things that everyone preaches on every podcast. But then start to experiment with things and see what feels good, what feels bad. Stop doing the things that make you feel shitty. It's like, it's really that simple, but it's also hard.
It is hard. And if I go back, Jay, to the developmental model that we talked about earlier, if you're living in the world's not okay, that's a real hard, if you don't know where your next meal's coming from, it's a real hard place to be like, gosh, what's my highest purpose? What does my soul want? How do I make art? We got to get ourselves in a position where we actually are stable, where we are okay. Right? So you just said like 3 things. Start working out, start eating better, make some space.
Yeah.
I've had so many clients that have come to me and I'm like, hey, do you meditate? No. Okay, you do now. Do you journal? No. Okay, you do now. And what do you know? You did have 35 minutes in your day to sit there, eyes closed. Yeah, you had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry. And you do have 3 kids. They're not up at 5. Get your ass up at 5. Sit there. Write this stuff out. And then I think it's David Data in The Way of the Superior Man says it's incumbent on every man for 1 hour a week to do the thing that you simply love. 1 hour. You got an hour. Again, if you don't think you have an hour, unplug your TV and hide your phone. You got an hour, and start there.
Yeah.
Something else I'll say to the men. What can you do with your hands? Whereas there's such a disconnect of us, like you make a living with your actual hand. I type and speak. So what have I started doing in the last couple of years? I learned how to make knives by hand.
It's dope.
I do like shibari, the like rope tying by hand. It's something physical rather than staring at my goddamn phone all day or typing on a computer all day. Get back to your nature and get back to nature because that actually helps us feel like the world is okay and I'm okay. You know how much money I've made making knives, Jay? $0. You know how much I've paid to learn how to make knives? A lot of dollars. But do you know what I feel like for a month after making a knife? I'm going to be okay if the world goes to shit.
You know, Traver, man, I think to a story that is going to totally relates to this and also to something we talked about earlier. And we'll, I know you got to go. I'm sorry I kept you so long. We'll wrap up. When I first started dating my now wife, my girlfriend at the time, I was painting, and I tend to have my deepest thoughts when I'm painting. It's my form of meditation. And I was painting for hours, and my wife was in the kitchen, and for some reason, I had the thought of like, you know what? I finally understand while women will just sit around and tweet with no exact purpose. It never made sense to me. I was like, why are you just talking about nothing? Why are you just doing this thing where it doesn't lead to anything? It seems so purposeless. And it was stupid of me to think that, but I was painting and I just, oh my God, I had this thought. I went and told my wife, or my then girlfriend, I was like, Chelsea, I understand why women do that, blah, blah, blah. And she didn't think this was so like intellectually amazing. But for many people, I was like, it's the same reason that I sit here for 4 hours at a time and paint for no damn reason. It helps me process. It helps me meditate. It helps me understand myself. It helps me see the world, and it helps me to just quiet down and not have a direct purpose to my present moment. And that's the same women that are reason that some women will just talk. And I understand that, and I respect that so much more now, because I'm like, that's one way that stereotypically women can process and connect and contribute. And then men might have, like you said, jujitsu or fishing or painting or making knives or tying knots. There's no real reason. It just helps you. It helps you not have a reason, which helps you think, and you process the subconscious shit in your head that normally you're too busy to actually think about. So I'll be painting and I'll be like, oh my God, all these different things floating through my head, and I'll feel like I just had a therapy session.
Exactly. You've created space.
It's so easy to convince yourself that that's a waste of time. So many men especially will say, I used to love to play guitar or soccer or whatever it is, but now I don't because it's kind of stupid or it doesn't pay the bills or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, what are you sprinting towards, right? Like, well, what are you just trying to like fill your time until you die? We used to be contemplative. Guys used to just like go sit under a tree and have a piece of hay in their mouth and like throw a rock in a can and think and feel and experience. That's where, let me say it this way. I find that when I'm making knives, when I'm tying knots, when I'm doing jujitsu, when I'm surfing, I'm in direct relationship with life.
Yeah.
When you're painting, I imagine you are in direct relationship with this entity and energy we call life. When I'm on my phone, I'm in a relationship to my phone. When I'm working, I'm in relationship to work. When I'm eating, I'm in relationship to the food. When I'm with my partner, I'm in relationship to her. As a man, I need to engage with, tussle with, make love to, chat with, sit with this entity called life. I feel better, which then bleeds into all of those other areas when I get to do this. At the end of our workshop, Jay, of the Uncivilized Initiation, we take all of the men out onto the land. There's this huge open space in Colorado, and we leave them there for about 2 hours separately. Go wander somewhere, sit under a tree. Ask the land a question, which is essentially ask life a question. Come back and see what the answer is 2 hours later. We will have guys revolutionary ideas, shit that they've been carrying for years that they let go of, insights that they've been struggling to find for decades in 2 fucking hours with no phones, sitting their ass down in the land and feeling life itself, nature itself, and themselves. Think if we did that for twice a week for a month, if every American man did that. Think of the radical changes that would happen in their personal lives, in their health, in their mental health. We would like probably tear society down. We'd be like, all right, enough of this drama, nonsense, bullshit, politics, greed. We're done with that. We're done with war. Like, come on back. Here's what we're doing. As a father, this is what I advocate. As a husband, this is what I advocate. As a man, this is what I advocate. We're done with this whole civilized spiel. This is nonsense. Everybody go sit under a fucking tree for 2 hours and see how your life changes.
I think that I would encourage, if I was in that group with you, which I would love to do sometime, I would encourage people to pick up a sketchbook and add that to their journaling process as well, because I'm convinced that it's just as beneficial as journaling or meditation, but there's some emotions and experiences that can't be written down into words, and sometimes the forms and the shapes and the colors speak louder.
Yeah, man. I love that. Thank you for that. The first time I had a coach have me draw on a big piece of, like a sketch paper, like a big one. And I was like, hey, here's the deal. Sorry, I'm a writer. I don't draw. And she's like, that's adorable. Go to the fucking corner and draw. Right? And I still have that because it was a sketch out of what I wanted Uncivilized to be. I still have it. I still look at it because you're right. If I had put 50 words on that paper, it was little stick figures, Jay, of me with a dog and a surfboard in front of hundreds of other stick figures was like the bottom image. And I've got a surfboard in the corner, a dog sleeping on the couch next to me, and a movement of thousands and thousands of men all over the world. I don't think I would have handwritten that. So thank you for that. Yeah, drum.
I think that these types of things are what help men connect the left and the right brain, because jiu-jitsu, playing guitar, art, writing, all these different things, you need to have both the logic and the theory and all those types of things, but it's also the creativity of problem solving, especially jiu-jitsu, especially making a painting. You have to problem solve. And then I think that trains your brain. So when you're in a business situation or you're out in nature, whatever it might be, you're looking for, how can I put these pieces of the puzzle together? How can I solve something? So your left brain is satisfied, but you're doing it in a right brain way. And it really kind of trains your brain in a different way. I think that's valuable.
Super valuable.
Yeah. Traver, you're freaking awesome, dude. I'm so glad that we chatted, and I'm both stoked that we just talked and bummed that we don't do it more often.
Thank you. Me as well, man.
So people can find you at manuncivilized.com. Instagram, you're super active at Traver Boehm.
Yeah. And I'll tell you here, Jay, in October, I got another book coming out.
Nice.
28 Days in Darkness.
Okay.
It's about my month in the dark, and it's about helping people navigate dark times in their lives.
Okay.
When that comes out, I'll send you a copy. But October 15th is the pre-launch.
Love it, man. If people are listening and they're like, I want to join one of your groups, where would they, how would they go about doing that? Is just go on your website? Is it a virtual group? Is it in person? Like,
it's both. So manuncivilized.com/the nation. And we have, I think, 42 in-person groups now all over the world, and a virtual hub that anybody can come to who's in a place that they don't have a live group, or if they just feel like they want to keep it online. So it's all at the nation, manuncivilized.com/the nation.
It's awesome. Dude, thanks, Traver.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.